I have become convinced that the place apart of the poet or painter is to explore the world at the edge of knowledge and bring something back from there. It is this withdrawal that I have come to understand may constitute the most important part of our consciousness. And it is because artists have left us their meditations on the life they observed that audiences also experience a place apart. John Sevcik. The artist and poet John Sevcik, who died in March at age 72, has an incredible retrospective up at the Cheltenham Center for the Arts. The idea for the show came from John's friend and fellow artist, Paul DuSold. It was organized by his wife, artist Lynne Campbell, and the center's director, Margaret Griffin. Having attended the opening, I have come to believe that John is an artist of major significance. What makes this show so powerfully moving to me? I believe it's because his paintings are as much about feeling as they are about seeing.
This is Lynne Campbell, John Sevcik's wife. In painting, John felt everything. Nothing was lost on him. He experienced the world deeply, and he turned those experiences into paintings. He made paintings from dreams, from memory, and from life. It might be most true to say that he made them from experience. There's a little painting in the show called Night, Floating. John made it from memory of a pond near his studio at the time. But he had never seen any swimmers in that pond. He invented those based on his own transcendent experience of floating in a pool near his studio, at twilight, below trees, after a long hot day of painting. John sometimes spoke of the divinity of the senses. We experienced so much together in nature, it was like our religion. We'd go on beautiful walks through woodlands, along creeks and rivers and salt marshes. We'd wander through meadows. John turned it into paintings. Everything reached him. After a springtime meadow walk, transported by the blossoming trees, John began painting Moonlight in Spring. It's made of his memory of that place and his feeling for it. The family in the painting is his mystic invention. John was able to get great paintings from running errands. He made a painting of a window washer called Man at His Cross. John had been waiting for me in the car while I was in the post office. He saw the window washer at his work, made a quick sketch in ballpoint pen on the back of an envelope, and turned it into a visionary painting, a kind of moral tale. He saw the mythic and the holy in everyday life. A painting in the show that I consider another of his moral tales is from something he saw while driving through Center City. Homeless people gathered in friendship on the sidewalk outside of a church. One of the men is using an umbrella to shelter himself from a steam vent. John's family history had a great influence on his life and his art. His parents were political exiles of the Cold War. They lost all they had in leaving Czechoslovakia. John lived his whole life aware of that loss and the great sacrifice his parents made for him and his siblings. The Valley Forge nocturnes John painted in the early 1990s are an example of work that was influenced by his family history. They meditate on the relation of the superpowers and the greater forces that shape lives. He cared about the world and its fate. But I think it might also be true to say everything John did was influenced by his family history. For much of his life, John felt like an outsider. The sympathy he felt for what his parents endured shaped his character, and therefore his art. I think the pain he suffered was the source of the great empathy he showed toward others. It comes through in his work. John found the world a place of beauty and of loss. He was moved by all of it. The stars and planets and night sky, meadows and fields, clouds and trees, people in all their great variety, their complexity, their divinity. In all of our years together, I never stopped being awed at the way John would transform something we experienced together into a great drawing or painting. All of life fascinated him. John said he was glad people might experience melancholy in his work, the melancholy which comes from reverence and a sensitivity to the world as a place of delight, of awe, and of loss.
In 1951, John Sevcik was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. His parents had been Czech nationals who fled to Argentina to escape the prospect of living under communist rule. Before that, during World War II, Czechoslovakia had been invaded by the Nazis. John's father went to England to join the battle against Hitler. John wrote this about his painting, Night Crossing. Done after drawings made during a ferry trip across the English Channel during the 50th anniversary of D-Day, this painting helped me commune with those brave soldiers and sailors who basically saved the world and made my life much better thereby. That my own father had been part of this historic endeavor makes my appreciation more personal. The hardships that his mother and father faced deeply affected John. Themes of exile and dislocation would be embedded in John's work for the rest of his life. When John was 3, his family emigrated to the U.S. John's first love was astronomy. He built a telescope when he was in the 8th grade. His first drawings were of the stars. He studied astronomy and then English in college. In one of his blogs, John wrote, "What happened next was very surprising to me. I wrote poems that assembled into a strange script about people in a place apart, a space station in orbit around the Earth. And suddenly, John was a successful playwright whose plays were produced by the Philadelphia Company, Theater of the Edge, the Brick Playhouse, and the City Theater of Wilmington. But his continued interest in art led him to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. John went on to have successful careers as a visual artist, poet, and teacher. He taught at the Fleischer Art Memorial, Delaware College of Art and Design, Immaculata College, and Bucks County Community College, as well as the Cheltenham Center for the Arts. I greatly admire John's ability to express his poetic vision both in words and in images. I asked Lynne to read some of John's poems about art.
Painting. I want to stop your soul in flight and make you stay a while. Consider me, consider you, and think of beauty too. Before you go in whirling speed, I'll think in hurried need of what and where the soul has bared its heart for us to see. My brush. My brush is hog, the stick a plow. We rut the earth and round its lives, impart a stillness into sense. This bodied earth the harrow's comb, I wipe it with a rag like rain. I am young and young again. I tow the river into veins, the trees, the sky, I all imbibe. I am in autumn, I am, between the rows of earth and sun, pinata of the pictures done. Someday swift eyes will lance my glutton into their own sense, fed on stillness once again.
Hi, I'm Bill Scott. I'm a painter, and John was a good friend.
Bill, John went to the Academy a decade after us. How did you get to know him and his work?
John and Lynne lived within walking distance of me. I loved having coffee with them and sharing a meal and going to the Barnes Foundation and talking about paintings with them.
You've been very close to John and Lynne for a long time. They called you Billy. Tell me about their relationship.
I've sometimes organized exhibitions, group shows, mostly at Cerulean, where John and Lynne had a show earlier this year, shortly after John's death. I know a lot of artist couples, and usually they don't want to show together, but they were this romantic couple, more in love than the most romantic story I could ever imagine, and they just didn't want to be separated in life or in painting, so they were both in the show, which was a pleasure.
John made this painting based on the myth of Hero and Leander. Hero was a priestess of Aphrodite. Leander fell in love with her and would swim nightly across the Hellespont to meet her, guided by a light she lit for him. One night a storm puts out the light and Leander is drowned. Hero, despondent at the death of her lover, drowns herself. John and I used to go to a beautiful New Jersey beach at night. The dark waters of the inlet between Longport and Ocean City put John in mind of the Hellespont and helped inspire this painting.
I personally had only seen John's work in reproduction, and I'm flabbergasted by this exhibition.
I've never seen so many of his paintings before in one place. It's a real bittersweet pleasure, and I wish I could walk through the exhibition with him.
John's work is representational, but not at all what I would call realism. He generates a tension between timelessness and modernity. John wrote about that and his influences for his painting Rising. Trying to combine what I felt of Caspar David Friedrich, Winslow Homer, Albert Pinkham Ryder, and modern life, which means admitting the motorboat as a mythic vessel. I experienced this feeling for the first time when we were arriving in Santorini by a hydrofoil ferry. It had slowed down and settled into the water while the engine growled enough to make the entire boat shudder. Since then, I have always felt the power and folly of small boats. I can see how John used themes and ideas from the artist he mentioned, but other than Ryder, his work doesn't really resemble theirs. Bill, you really know art history. Can you think of any other artist whose work reminds you of John's?
In contemplating his almost visionary moonlit landscapes and imagery that is both calm and spiritual, I found myself thinking of paintings by Alchemius, and I don't know if John had an opinion about him, but I now wonder why I never asked him.
Lynne told me no, he never mentioned Alchemius, but I think you're right on the money. Like both Ryder and Alchemius, there's a bit of a naive quality in John's work, which I associate with so-called outsider artists. I asked Lynne if John was aware of that. Lynne explained that John was well trained at PAFA and not an outsider artist. But she felt John was a kindred spirit of visionary artists, trained or not. Personally, I feel it's precisely John's affinity with outsiders that is the source of much of the power in John's work. Now, Bill, can you talk about some of your favorites in John's show?
I particularly love his ocean paintings. The Woman Against the Sea. And the figures in the moonlit landscape and the constellations. And moonlight in spring. One of the paintings that seems the most mysteriously enigmatic to me is On the Avenue. For me, it's completely nonverbal, but it makes me ponder what its meaning is. The title I love the most is Noah Left Us Behind. It's so sad, but I don't know if it refers to us leaving John behind or John leaving us behind.
What draws me in to John's art is its rootedness in the human condition. He portrays great joy and triumph and delight, but also cruelty, fear, and resignation. In this painting, John shows us how aggression is just part of our nature and first shows itself in childhood. There is an awful helplessness to the mother's gaze. And yet, hope reigns supreme in John's work. Here, frightened protesters in a tiny boat assuage their fear by reading the Beatitudes, which John inscribed onto the frame. In one of my favorites, which is sadly not in the show, a confident young woman skates with exuberance on a forbidding winter night. Will the ice hold? No fear holds her back, and that warm little light in the cabin guides her home. John has left us, but his art and poetry survive him. Lynne, please read one more of John's poems about art.
A painting is a painting. A painting is a painting. It's not like you or me. Nobody gets older. No one ever sleeps. It's a stillness made of life, with meaning in its air. You feel it as you watch it, even as you stare at those forever praying or lying nude aware. Not of us, but God, and the artist never there. We travel time to then, and then to us appears. Time becomes transparent, and what is far comes near. Who gave their life to painting that we can know life more? The artist in his garret? The model in her maze? We think of things self-evident when we observe those lives frozen in the minerals of pigments and the mind. But what of art's intention? Does it think or know the way? The artist isn't talking. There's nothing more to say. Who made a painting matter, then vanished long ago? Who gave their life to painting, so we enjoy life more?
Painter and Poet, the work of John Sevcik, will be up at the Cheltenham Center for the Arts through October 13th, 2024.